Hey everyone, welcome back to a new channel. I hope you've all been keeping well. In this episode, I want to spend some time sharing with you one of my favourite books of all time. Funnily enough, it was a book recommended by a friend of mine called Mo, who you may all know as That Medic on YouTube. And I want to tell you why it's one of the best books and I highly recommend you all take the time out to read it. It's called Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. Shoe Dog is a memoir by Phil Knight, who is the founder of Nike. And in this book, he shares his journey from the very beginning. He takes you through his struggles, his difficulties, his financial troubles, and it shows you how he made Nike a global brand it is today. You can pretty much go anywhere in the world and you'll see someone wearing a pair of Nikes. Nike in 2020 was valued at more than $34 billion, and Phil Knight himself was valued more than $50 billion. Shoe Dog starts 50 years ago, in 1962, when Phil was a 26-year-old guy. Having just spent a year in the army, he's traveling around the world and he just doesn't know what he wants to do with his life. It tells you about a moment when he was in college and he had what he describes as a crazy idea where he thought he can import training shoes or running shoes from Japan and sell it to America. You have to remember, Phil was an avid runner. He absolutely loved running, and he even said if everyone ran, the world would be a better place. In the book, he takes you through the next 18 years of his journey, of his obstacles and his struggles. From the very beginning, it shows there are opportunities everywhere. You just have to look, spot them and grab them with both hands. While in Japan, he met a company called Onitsuka, who were manufacturing the Tiger shoes. And there, on that spot, he created a company he called Blue Ribbon, where he wanted to import shoes from Japan and become a distributor for them. But you have to remember, he made it on the fly and Blue Ribbon wasn't even an official company. He called it his crazy idea. He even wrote about it in his college final year paper about the opportunities of importing products from abroad and selling it to America. The beauty about this book is it's full of so many lessons and so many gems, and it shows you life is such a big learning curve. And if you fail, it doesn't matter. You can take those lessons and use it for your next project. It's called a growth mindset and you really learn about that. In the book, Phil wrote, if Blue Ribbon went bust, I'd have no money and I'd be crushed. But I'd also have some valuable wisdom which I can apply to the next business. Wisdom seemed an intangible asset, but an asset all the same, and that justified the risk. One of the things I learned from Phil reading this book, as he gave such a raw account, was the value and importance of having close people around you. The importance of having a team that believes in your vision. For Phil, he called them shoe dogs. And these are people so obsessed with every aspect of a trainer. From the laces, the design, the insoles, the way it looked, the way it felt. And it reminds me of our own journey and having people with us that believe in our vision and our goals and what we really want to achieve in our lives. Just an insight, one of those important people that Phil mentions multiple times throughout the book, who also became a business partner, was Bowerman. He was a famous, renowned American running coach. And when you read more, you realize that he was obsessed with running. It's important when we do start these projects, these side hustles, these passions, we work with people that are obsessed with it. He used to experiment on shoes. He reports he used his wife's iron one time to create the waffle shoes that he experimented with his athletes. And the beauty about it is, Phil just trusted them. He let them get on with it. And he says, don't tell people how to do things. Tell them what to do and let them surprise you with the results. The difficulty of a startup is known, and there's a lot of you who may be watching that know the difficulties of running it from the very beginning to growing it to what a brand like Nike is today. Even while Nike was earning more than $300,000 a year, he still had to work as a full-time accountant. And it's eventually afterwards, he started working full-time for the company, and only then did he give himself a measly salary. It shows the journey of an entrepreneur. When we think of Nike today, we see it as a global brand. But this book, it shares you about the struggles they faced. As an entrepreneur, it shows you the risks he took. At one point, the government imposed a tax on him for $25 million, and as the entrepreneur, he refused to pay a single penny. He eventually settled for a sum of $9 million. But throughout the book, you realize he always took things on the edge. He always took risks. He barely met the minimum repayment for the loans he took to kind of grow Nike as fast as he did. His goal was to make Nike the best running brand in the world, and he invested everything he had, not only his time, his money, his ideas, his visions, to make it such an amazing global brand. It makes you think that there's a sweetness when you overcome every obstacle in life. It may be financial, it may be a tech related, it may be team related, but I believe that's the sweetness in life, once you overcome one obstacle and challenge yourself for the next. As you read the book, you'll start to feel and realize that he figured things out on the way. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to know everything from the very beginning. We didn't know that, and we're still learning on the way, and you have to be open-minded with a growth mindset. It makes you realize that in life you need a calling. You need to have a passion. You need to know what you want to achieve. We all have a finite time on this earth, and it's not just about having a career. You really need to love it, and you really need to know what your purpose is. Once you have this purpose and you know what you're doing, the disappointments are easier, the challenges are easier to face, and the highs will be like nothing you've ever felt before. We all think of Nike, but it wasn't Nike, it was Blue Ribbon who showed these shoes that he imported from Japan called Tiger shoes. But let me tell you something he did, and it just shows you how much of a risk taker he was. The distributor, or the company that he was importing the shoes from Japan, came to visit him in America, and they wanted to buy out Blue Ribbon and wanted them to become his sole distributor. But Phil sensed something was off. So what he did, he waited for the representative to go to the toilet, and he opened the guy's briefcase, and lo and behold, he found a document which showed this guy had lined up 18 other distributors who they wanted to work with in America after seeing the great potential and success that Phil Knight delivered for them. And it was at that point he knew he had to do something. Nike's an amazing name. It's well known. But let me tell you something funny. Phil Knight didn't like the name. In fact, he wanted to call it Dimension 6. And you'd be thinking, what? It was actually one of his first employees, who was called Jeff, that came up with the name Nike. And I want to spend a bit of time talking about Jeff Johnson, who was as obsessed with shoes as you could get. He loved it. He loved that rush. He loved running. He was so consumed by it. It was amazing. He even moved to another part of the country to sell these shoes. When you read, you realize he sent Phil thousands of letters, but Phil never responded. Yet he didn't stop that from persevering. But let me tell you about the beauty in this. You don't need to be a founder. You don't need to be an exec. You don't need to be a CEO of a company to make impact. You can do it in your own little meaningful way. And he is probably one of the main reasons as to why Nike is so successful today. He didn't need recognition or credit. He didn't let anyone else stop him from fulfilling his desires and goals. So you don't need to be a founder or a startup CEO to feel like you're making an impact in the world. Find your calling and do what you love most. As you grow and you work in these organizations, you realize how important management teams and senior execs are. Reading the book, it was interesting to see an insight on how they managed it. They used to have these retreats every so often, and they called it butt faces, where they used to take the mick out of each other. They used to talk about Nike, how to grow, how to make better, should they go public. But the underlying theme was they loved each other. They had this burning desire and this unified vision to make Nike the best running shoe for athletes across the world. And it goes to show the importance of having good people that are responsible for you, and you as a leader being responsible for those that you work with. This book was such a raw, honest account of how Nike was founded. He takes you through every moment. He shows you the ins and outs. It's so easy to be caught up with their success today, but we fail to realize how hard it was for him. Bear in mind, this was so many years ago. They didn't have access to social media. There wasn't many VC firms, and everyone thought he was crazy. Until now, we see all of the world's famous athletes wearing Nikes. I highly recommend you all take the time out to read this book. Even if you're not an entrepreneur, even if you're not interested in startups, just hearing the stories in itself is inspirational. It personally encouraged me to keep motivated, to keep going, despite the difficulties, despite the struggles. Phil Knight truly is a remarkable genius, and to finally be able to hear his story on how Nike became the global brand it is today is refreshing and encouraging, and I hope you all find the same. Thank you for listening to this, and I hope it gives you all some benefit of some degree.